Well, this one's not a trick. You can finish the sentence because I think all of us know the sentence well. You can finish it with the last word. As much as things change, they also remain the excellent. We're on target. As much as things change is how much they remain the same. You can think about that in a few levels. As much as things change, they remain the same. Every weekend we come, it's a different liturgy, but it's the same Mass, the same Eucharist, the same Christ that we meet in word and in sacrament. And for the last 3 weeks now, 2 weeks ago, last week, this week, we have different gospel parables, but we have one thing that has remained the same. What has remained the same? We're still in the vineyard. Have you noticed that? We're in the vineyard. I'm getting awfully thirsty. We're still in the vineyard. And 2 weeks ago, you'll recall that the owner of the vineyard, and whenever we look at the vineyard, we know the vineyard's the world, and the owner, the father of the vineyard, is God, the Father himself. The workers in the vineyard, you and myself, all people, we're called to be the workers. 2 weeks ago, we know the owner of the vineyard went out at dawn to hire workers, sent them to the vineyard, went out again at 9 a.m., found more people, sent them to the vineyard again at noon, at 3, 1 hour before quitting time, 5 o'clock, sent them all to the vineyard to work. It's a story 2 weeks ago. Last Sunday, we will recall that the father who owns the vineyard went to both of his sons. To the one son, he said, "Go to the vineyard," and the boy said yes, but he never went. And the other boy, the father went and said, "Go to the vineyard," and he said no, but he changed his mind, and he went to the vineyard. And we know that Jesus said very clearly which one did what the Father wanted. And the answer came, the one who changed his mind, who said no in the beginning, but then went to do the Father's work in the vineyard. He did what the Father wanted. Today we hear Jesus kind of picking up on Isaiah, the very first reading. Actually, the exact same images are used of the winepress, the hedge, the watchtower. And we hear about those tenants, people who were supposed to be working in the vineyard, the leaders of Israel, but they really were not doing the work of the owner of the vineyard. And the owner of the vineyard went, it was harvest time, and sent his servants. Some were beaten, some were killed. Eventually he sends his son. Of course, that is representative to us of Jesus himself, who was put to death. As much as things change, they remain the same. What are the lessons here? Well, 2 weeks ago, the lesson was that no matter when we choose to go to work in the vineyard, we all get the same inheritance, eternal life. And for some of us, at that dawn hour, our whole lives, from the moment we're baptized, we have always been part of the work of the vineyard. I often think of my parents who worked so diligently in the vineyard of the world, so faithfully. Still that in me. Many of you, I know, have worked in the vineyard all of your lives from the very beginning. Some come at that 9 o'clock hour, maybe our teenagers, young adults who take very seriously their confirmation and start to live in the vineyard and work in the vineyard. Last weekend I had the privilege to direct a couple dozen young adults, all college students in the Diocese of Ogdensburg, on 3 days of retreat. Wonderful workers for the vineyard. Great hope for the future. These 24 young men and women from various colleges and universities, so focused on the teaching of the church and bringing it alive in the world today. Some come at that noon hour or that 3 o'clock hour later in life, maybe a time they're getting married or a time that they're raising family, and said, I got to start getting into faith more and start working in the vineyard. So maybe in middle life that kicks in. And of course, that 5 o'clock hour, rarely do we see it, but once in a while it happens that there's a moment of death conversion, and someone comes to Christ and works in the vineyard. And we know that that gospel 2 weeks ago called us to see when is it that we responded, and are we remaining faithful to working in the vineyard. Last week, we remember the call was one to remain focused, to do what you said. Don't say yes, but then turn around and not go. And if we've said no, to know there's room for conversion, to turn that no to a yes. Today we see that very often, many who are baptized and many who are confirmed, it's just an empty ceremony, a ritual to go through, have no real intention of backing that yes up. We see that take place today, because as much as things change, is how much they really do remain the same. And today we've got problems in the vineyard today, don't we? Those lousy tenants, they didn't even give over the share of grapes. And they put to death and beat some of the servants, eventually the son, put to death. There's problems in the vineyard. And you know what? As much as things change is how much they remain the same. And in the vineyard of the world today, there are problems. There are great problems in the vineyard today. This past week I had lunch with one of the sons of one of my college classmates. We had a wonderful lunch. He himself now is in college. He goes to one of our Catholic colleges locally. I'll protect the name of the school. And he was sharing with me that he's taking an ethics class. And he said, you know, I'm very pro-life. He said, and we're a third of the way through the semester, and every single article we've been given to read has been in favor of abortion. And he said, I'm very much pro-life. He said, but these arguments are very compelling, and it's obvious that there's an agenda in this classroom. There's problems in the vineyard and some of our Catholic schools. When I was a young priest, to which you will politely respond, you still are a young priest. When I was a young priest, newly ordained, I was chaplain at a Catholic high school. I'll protect their name. And 3 homilies I gave in a row, I tangentially used as an example the issue of abortion. I received a visit from an administrator of the school who went through a checklist of things, and they said, oh, by the way, since we're meeting, well, now you got to the real agenda, you know. And, you know, some of the students are very upset that you keep talking about abortion, and we really believe it's up to them to make up their mind. And their parents are upset, and we rely on their generosity. So could you please stay away from that topic? To which I responded, and I quote, you can either wait to the mail tomorrow and read it or verbally accept my letter of resignation now, because I will not be told what I can and cannot preach about, particularly when it comes to the very core values of the gospel of life of the church. There are problems in the vineyard. In the Buffalo News, I don't often quote the Buffalo News, but in the Buffalo News this week, they told us about problems in the vineyard. It was Thursday's paper, right on the front of Section B, condom availability weighed for high schools. And they gave all of the statistics of the city of Buffalo and many areas of sexual morality or immorality. They didn't mention the suburbs, but my guess is our statistics are probably pretty darn close to the same. And lowering the bar on morality and wanting to freely distribute contraception rather than raising the bar, calling our young men and women to leading a chaste life. The gospel has always called us to raise the bar to live to Christ and not lower the bar to meet the immorality of the times. The vineyard has got an awful lot of problems. Tomorrow is Life Chain. And you know, a month ago I spoke at all the masses. I was inescapable. And I was told that from St. Greg's, the largest parish of the diocese, to expect about 15 people to go to Life Chain. That was prior to me speaking. And I'm very pleased to say that we have taken that 15 number and increased it by 1,600%, meaning about 240 people have signed up to go tomorrow. And that's on the buses. We do have people saying they're going to meet us there by car. So that's really a wonderful thing, and I mean it from the depth of my heart. I'm very gratified. But there are problems in the vineyard, and the problem is that 240 represents only about 1.5% of our parish that still needs to really reflect upon taking a stand for human life. There are problems in the vineyard. A recent study last year, 2013, the Washington Post and ABC did a study on the Catholic Church and baptized Catholics and where they stand with the issue of abortion. And although I would hope their statistics are incorrect, their number was 50%. They said about 50% of people who claim to be Catholic believe in abortion. About 50%. There are problems in the vineyard. Well, today, this weekend, tomorrow in particular, you have a choice to make, because I want it to be very clear the church is a church of choice. This is a pro-choice church. You can choose to stand for the gospel of life with God, or you can choose to stand with the gospel of death, rooted in the devil. It is our individual choice. The church as a whole has always stood with God and the gospel of life. If you choose the gospel of life, we stand together, and I encourage you to come. Just come tomorrow to be that visible sign on Niagara Falls Boulevard. From 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, we have extra buses. We're leaving here at 1:30. You can leave your car here. Otherwise, meet us there. We are on Niagara Falls Boulevard, starting on the corner of Brighton, heading towards the city, directly across the street from the Boulevard Mall. We invite you to vote in favor of the gospel of life. And I pray that you do not choose to vote for the gospel of death, because the gospel of death leads ultimately to all of the ripples I spoke about a month ago. The ripples of bullying, the ripples of contraception and sexually transmitted diseases, the ripples of many acts of violence in homes, on streets, in schools, and across our nation and beyond. Please vote wisely tomorrow.